Thank you. I think Martin was next.
Hi. This is for Josh, really. I thought your study was really fascinating. I've got two very quick questions and then maybe a suggestion about answering the question you posed at the end. The two quick questions. Firstly, did you look at more than one type of program, waivers and the state plan personal care option, and was there any variation in your results between those programs, or were you only looking at one program? That's the first question.
Well, we were looking at the two programs combined because our sample size wasn't large enough to...
So you couldn't differentiate, you couldn't
No.
split that? Okay, that's the first one. I've forgotten what the second question is now, so I'll just go to my answer. Your somewhat surprising result about the difference between the younger and the older, could it be that the older cohort had previously more experience of the agency model, and so were they relatively more satisfied with the self-directed model after having suffered or experienced the agency model? And in which case then, do you know how long the people who are on the self-directed model had experienced the agency model previously? And you could hypothesize that the longer you'd had agency care, the more satisfied you would be with self-direction afterwards. Possibly.
The survey doesn't have any information on prior home care use, so we can't address that.
Because some of the younger people might have come into the program and only experienced self-direction and never had agency care, right?
Yes, but I mean, I guess what I usually offer up as a hypothesis is that consumer direction in Washington State is a long-standing activity. They've been doing this for 20 years. So if you believe in the market, it may be that the agency-directed services for the younger population has adapted because they know if they don't get it right, they're going to get whomped. And so they've made that adjustment. And maybe they haven't made that adjustment yet for the older population. I think also, frankly, part of it, although we weren't able to analyze this, I think a lot of it has to do with, we do know a substantial portion of the consumer-directed services were provided by family members. And I think that has a significant impact on satisfaction. And I've kind of raised issues about consumer direction for a while about whether we ought to be thinking about consumer direction, at least in part, as support for informal caregivers rather than a kind of direct service model. Obviously, it's more than that, but that's a substantial part of what I think it is. And it needs to be evaluated and thought of in those terms.
It would also be really nice if you could interview the care providers as well. See if their satisfaction changes.
You hear that, Ruth?
I did. I did. I wish we had enough money for all of this. Vera, I think Vera had a question.
I wanted to thank Bob for his comment about the unintended consequences of increasing wages and cutting back hours. And I think that really emphasizes from the advocacy point of view, the importance of consumers and workers advocating together. And there's a real danger in this field of pitting the consumer against the worker. And I think that's a kind of lose-lose situation for everyone. So I think, harking back to what we said about building advocacy coalitions, it's really critical that the disability community embrace the worker organizations and work together so that the whole system gets lifted up.
Right. I've been looking in that direction. Is there anyone ever here? Yes.
Lee Schultz from Wisconsin. Regarding the path of vulnerability you're talking about, do you see any change with the development and expansion of long-term care purchased by individuals that pay for home care impacting that?
I guess it could, but if you look at kind of the characteristics of younger people who come into nursing homes, they tend to be, I didn't give like income numbers, but it tends to be quite a low income population, and so it's not clear to me that for not saying that there wouldn't be some, but for many of them, the purchase of private long-term care insurance might be somewhat out of reach for them, as opposed to the case in, say, an older population where there are more resources. Younger people coming into nursing homes, by and large, have particularly in kind of the older group, have many more limited resources.
And I think, yes.
Hi, Mary James, I have a question for Josh, another comment like Martin's. I was wondering, there's two things that I thought about, sitting up here. You invited us to think about what was going on with those findings. One might be that I think that talking about silos, we lump people that are under 65 and older 65, as Mike said, you turn 65 and something happens to you. Perhaps that isn't the cutoff that you should be looking at. Perhaps there's another cutoff where you would see a statistically different answer if you had more younger people. Okay, so maybe it's 55, maybe it's 40, maybe it's 35, that you're not getting an effect because you're just cutting them arbitrarily on Medicare age. The other idea I had that I wondered about was, in the slide it says that there were surrogates, and I wonder if you can take out the surrogate responses. I'm guessing that there's more demented people in the older population, therefore there's more surrogate responses. There's probably fewer demented people in the younger population, which means they're giving more of their own responses. And we know that satisfaction is generally lower, life satisfaction among younger people, and rises with age, but we also know that surrogates value things very differently than the recipients of services. And I'd be curious if you could tease out those answers and get different findings.
Those are both two very good ideas. The basic limitation that we have is we're basically dealing with 500 respondents, so we can't be, frankly, we can't be throwing out any of our respondents and still have a relatively decent sample size.
I think, I'm sorry, Dr. LaPlante?
Well, the surveys may have biased the results for the elderly against the other.
Just one other thing on Josh's result. You might know a paper by Levy Storms that kind of suggests that people can be satisfied even when they're lower on a variety of other possibly more objective measures. So I was wondering if you had any opportunity to look at some other aspects of quality besides satisfaction.
The data we had didn't really allow for that, but clearly that was something we would have liked to have done if we had had the data.
I think on that note, we should give a round of applause to an excellent panel. Thank you very, very much.
Everyone's been very patient by not taking a break. We have cookies and coffee, so let's take 10 minutes and come back, and then we'll have our wrap up, because we really do want to hear more from a lot of you who haven't had a chance to speak and give us comments and questions. So we'll come back in about 10 minutes, and thank you. That's great.